Hello everybody! Welcome to my weekly wrap-up of July 10th, 2016, wherein, as I always say, I will tell you about the things I read this past week. And it was a really good reading week. It was very successful. I think I have 6 things to talk about, and 3 of them I just devoured because I love them so much. The first 2 books that I finished this week were Europe in Autumn and Europe at Midnight by Dave Hutchinson, and these are 2 of the books that I enjoyed the most. I read them both on the 4th of July, just bam, bam, bam. It was so good. I'm going to do a separate video about these 2 books, so I will talk about them more in that future video. But suffice to say here, I really love these books, especially the first book, Europe in Autumn. It was just intense and suspenseful while still having that kind of quiet spy thriller movie vibe. It reminded me a lot of how I felt watching Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, because I've seen that movie. The other book I thoroughly enjoyed this past week was Borderline by Mishell Baker. This is an urban fantasy novel about a young woman named Millie who was an aspiring director and a film student before she attempted suicide. She survived her suicide attempt, but as a result of it, she is a double amputee, she has brain damage from her head trauma, and she also has borderline personality disorder. And I have never read a book before that was so very much about a character living with a mental illness and physical disabilities. I don't have any experience to say whether I personally really judge this book to have been very successful in its portrayal of a character like this and of the issues, but it really struck me as a well-done story with very fascinating characters. Millie is recruited into the Arcadia Project, which she doesn't know anything about, but she agrees to join them, and it turns out that they kind of manage the Fae that come over from, of course, the fairy world, and then their human counterparts called Echoes. People like Millie are chosen for this project because they are expendable. They are deemed to be on the fringes of society. They often don't have family and friends to notice that they're gone or to care for them, and if they were to ever leave the Arcadia Project and spill the beans about the Fae, well, they're already mentally ill, so the theory is that people just won't pay attention to them because they think they're already crazy and this is part of their mental illness, which is awful, but also made the story very interesting for me because it really challenged me to think about how I view people like Millie in the real world. There were just some things in this book that made me kind of sit up straighter and go, well, I need to reevaluate some things. It's good to be challenged that way. The story itself is also pretty interesting. Millie is set up with her partner Teo, and they are asked to go find a Fae, Viscount Ravenholt, who has disappeared in the human world. He's supposed to be going home to the Fae world and they can't find him. This is another one where I'm really looking forward to the sequel, which is coming out in early 2017. I will be there. I will read it right away, because my only regret about this book is that I took a while to start it. I thought this book was going to be a lot darker, maybe a bit more depressing and difficult to read than it actually turned out to be. It certainly tackles some difficult issues, but it is also just a very fun, entertaining read. Then I have a couple of things that I just thought were okay. Dzur by Brust is the 10th book in the long-running fantasy series about an assassin named Vlad Taltos. As you can tell, because I'm on book 10, I am committed to catching up with the series. I think book 16 or 17 has already come out, so I will finish the series, but this was a really boring installment. Every like 3rd book or so in the series I just think isn't that good, and Dzur is one of them. Vlad has come back to the city where he used to run some of the illegal activities. He's been away for a couple of years, and he's supposed to be kind of helping his ex-wife with taking on a branch of a criminal organization that is putting pressure on the southern part of the city where humans live. And it wasn't that interesting. It felt kind of like a repeat of some previous storylines and previous tensions between Vlad and his ex-wife Cody. And once again, she doesn't really seem to want his help, but he's muscling in anyway. I don't like that about Vlad very much. and then nothing really exciting happens. Which is disappointing because the previous book, Isola, really had some revelations that opened up the world building more and made me think that this book was going to keep up that momentum, keep up that progress, and it just didn't. I do have the next book, Jagala, at hand to read right away, and I just hope that it continues the revelations from Isola in the way that Dzur should have. The other book that I read that I wasn't super impressed by was Stuff Matters by Mark Miodownik. I listened to this on audiobook, and something about it just grated on me the wrong way. Miodownik is a materials scientist, and this book is lots of factoids and trivia about why certain materials are so awesome. Things like glass and steel, concrete, graphene, things like that we use all the time and that have really revolutionized our stuff. So that was interesting. The subject matter is very cool, and I've never learned much about these things, but there was something about Miodownik's humor, the presentation of these things, and probably also the narration of the audiobook, that it just felt like the book was trying a little too hard to be funny and get your attention, almost like it was being written for a younger audience rather than adults. Other people will probably like it a lot more than I did, and I did feel like I learned some things, but it did not hold my attention for very long. I was tuning out a lot of times while listening to the audiobook, which is more on me, I would say, than necessarily the book itself, but it was okay. The final thing I have to talk about this week is Lightspeed magazine's June issue, People of Color Destroy Science Fiction, and it was very good, but mostly I have to say it was challenging. My experience reading stories like these written by and about people of color, very, very diverse stories, it's very challenging because I just haven't read a lot of diverse science fiction. I have been consciously choosing to look for and get my hands on science fiction and fantasy by people who are not like me. But I haven't read a critical amount of like short stories by these authors to really get a feel for what I like and what I don't like. I'm just always hit by this massive reaction of, this is so different, I'm not sure that I get it, I'm not sure that I relate to it, I'm not sure that I understand why it is this way. It's a great reading experience. I enjoy being challenged in that way. Not all readers seek out reading experiences like this, but I am doing it very consciously. I do think it's a very good collection. And there are just a lot of author names, a lot of writers that I will be keeping an eye out for. I hope to start recognizing more of these names and going, oh yeah, I like this person's story. I need to keep an eye out for their future releases and stuff. That's what really excites me about reading this. I didn't love a lot of the original fiction here. There were a couple stories that I did definitely get into, but mostly I enjoyed the reprints. No surprise there because they were authors that I already knew that I liked. I talked about A Good Home by Karen Loichi in the last short fiction live show that Joe and I did. It was one of my favorites for that live show. But it also has a reprint of a story by Octavia Butler, which I really liked. It was very strongly written. And then Empire Star, a novella by Samuel R. Delany, which I have been wanting to read for a very long time. I already know I really, really like Delany's science fiction. So yes, this is a good issue, and I really recommend that people read this. For people who are trying to read diversely in science fiction and fantasy, I have found that going for short stories is a more economical way to dip your toes into diverse stories than trying to track down and buy novels. Buying books when they're not available in your local library and when they're not available in local bookstores to you, that can get expensive really fast. But subscribing to a magazine like Lightspeed or Clark's World or Uncanny that are making it a point to translate stories from other languages to print stories by people of color, by queer authors and everything, you get a lot of bang for your buck there. I'm currently in the middle of a bunch of things, and my weekly reading goal is going to be finishing books in preparation for Booktubeathon in the coming week after this one. I still haven't set my TBR. I need to think about that some more. I am participating in Paul's weekly reading goals. I'll link the most recent video down below for you to watch that if you don't know about that. It is very, very motivating to join a group of people who are setting goals for themselves every week and then talk about it. It's just the community aspect, the friendly discussions, and then kind of holding yourself accountable to your goals every week has really motivated me and made me more excited to read a bunch of things in the past couple of weeks than I have felt in just the first part of this year. So I am excited for that. But really, that's it for me. I need to shut up now. So hope you guys had an excellent weekend and that your coming week treats you very well, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.